Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
All right, here we go. Dejon's going to go first. Jalen's going to go second. All right, roll Tide, buckle up.
Avery Johnson, one of the latest participants in the Whipped Cream Challenge. He was challenged by Alabama's Director of Athletics, Greg Byrne, Jalen Hurts, and Dazon Ingram, doing the honors of putting the pies in Coach's face for a good cause, of course. The Whipped Cream Challenge raises awareness for the 17 Strong Foundation, which benefits young adults facing life-threatening illnesses. A good cause and a good time to welcome everyone into another edition of Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. As always, the program brought to you by Buffalo Rock, proud bottlers of Pepsi-Cola products like Diet Pepsi. Remember, Pepsi is a Southern original, and that is ice cold. Gotta love it. Pick up some great Pepsi products the next time you're at your local grocery store. Rodney, you ready to go?
Sure.
I'll kick it off with basketball because Alabama has started practicing for their upcoming trip to Canada. And yesterday, the team had a practice for the media. They're going to play 3 teams in Canada in a trip through the cities of Montreal and Ottawa. And our first chance to see the top 5 Alabama freshman recruiting class. We got to see those guys in action. Colin Sexton, John Petty, Alex Reese, Galen Smith, and Herb Jones were all practicing in the Alabama basketball practice facility on Monday. Coach Avery Johnson's first task is creating chemistry between the new guys and the veterans. And so far, the team is seeing a strong bond between all of its players.
They spend more time than any of the other 2 teams that I've had. They spend more time together at this stage. So I think that chemistry is carried over on the floor.
We just been here for what, 2.5 months? Feels like we've been here about a year and something. Like we're playing more of an experienced team now.
Oh, they've been great teammates on and off the court. They make jokes all the time, and they're funny guys. But it's been great having them. Last year I felt like we had 1-2 leaders on the court. And now we have, feels like all 5 guys on the court are leaders, so it's been great.
Rodney, freshman, following the tradition of Nick Saban in the football program, off limits yesterday to the media, but the veterans talked about the returning players and the young guys all kind of coming together. Of course, even the returning players, most of them on this team aren't very old. So far, getting grade A reviews on the chemistry, and there's no doubt that the talent level has gone way up in the last couple of years since Avery Johnson arrived.
Yeah. I think you could kind of sense that over the last 2 years. It's kind of building, Gary. I think we felt like it would take a little bit of time, and you feel like that chemistry's really coming around. And, adding these young guys that are so talented coming into this recruiting class, one of the best recruiting classes Alabama's had in many, many years, obviously. I just think it's a great mix that they have right now. They have a couple of really good classes that they've strung together, and it's going to be really interesting to watch them as we get closer into the season.
There you see Daniel Giddens, the Ohio State transfer. He's big. These trips, you can only take them every so often, and it's limited by the NCAA. I think this year, though, was a perfect time for Alabama to do one. With all these freshmen, most of whom are expected to contribute, to get these 10 practices in and then go to Canada and play 3 games. I don't know that you can talk about just how important this is going to be to this young basketball team. It's a head start, a jump start on the season.
Oh, no question about it. I think anytime you have the opportunity, as you mentioned, Gary, to get those practices and then some game experience, that's invaluable. I mean, it's almost like a spring practice of sorts, but with games, actual competition. And I think that's going to be really big for some of these younger guys.
And, of course, next week there'll be an open practice for the fans before Alabama leaves for Canada, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Well, now from basketball to football, 2 second-year players, Rodney, leaving the program. Running back B.J. Emmons and cornerback Aaron Robinson transferring out. That came out last week. Emmons was a highly touted recruit coming out of North Carolina, but injuries and an intimidating depth chart limited his playing time. He's now transferred to Hutchinson Community College in Kansas. Robinson, a sophomore cornerback out of Deerfield Beach, Florida, reportedly wanted to get closer to home. He worked with the second-team defense in the spring. you know, that's just the way it goes. We'll get to more on that in a moment. On the recruiting front, though, Alabama continues to add players as well. A commitment from a 4-star offensive tackle on Friday, Tommy Brown, out of the renowned Mater Dei High School in California. Brown is 6'7", 313 pounds, and said Alabama has always been his dream school. His father was a track and field athlete for the Crimson Tide in the late 70s and the early 80s. All right, let's talk about these two developments. First, the transfers. B.J. Emmons, a really good football player, but that is a crowded position. Let's start with him. You had been hearing some rumblings that this might happen, and indeed it did. Why?
Well, again, I think when you look at it, you mentioned the injuries that set him back last year. You've got a crowded depth chart. Again, I don't think he's necessarily afraid of competition. But I think right now where he stands, maybe he felt like it was in his best interest to transfer somewhere else where he could get some playing time immediately at Hutchinson and then reevaluate his situation, which, you know, you can understand that. But at the same time, Aaron Robinson, I thought he's a really talented player potentially, Gary, at that cornerback position, which is really a high need for Alabama right now, developing these young corners. I thought he could have been a really strong contributor as time went along. And, you know, I hate to see him leave, but been hearing since early spring that he was homesick and wanted to get back closer to home. So, you know, sometimes that happens.
As far as Tommy Brown's concerned, he's a young football player. What I mean by that, he's only been playing for a couple of years. You see the arm length. He's got really long arms, pretty good feet. You know, probably needs to work on his, you know, getting a little stronger, getting a little more physical, but has all the tools.
Well, I think when you look at that frame and you kind of mix that with what Scott Cochran does in the Alabama Strength Conditioning Program, this guy's got a ton of potential. You see his frame there. You mentioned Gary. Again, how many guys at Mater Dei High School, you know the tradition that they have there at that high school, start as sophomores, very, very few. Tells you a lot about his potential.
And also, even though his dad was an athlete at Alabama, this was by no means a gimme. Oregon recruited him very, very diligently. It came down to Alabama and Oregon. And in fact, Tommy Brown loves Mario Cristobal. Oregon has said, we'll continue to recruit you. So Alabama may still have to continue to work with him just a little bit to make sure he winds up here.
I do think he's 100% as they go in terms of commitments. Because of all the ties here, and he certainly grew up wanting to play for Alabama, but he does respect Mario Cristobal and is going to allow him to leave the line of communication open.
All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television, the bombshell news late last week on Ole Miss. Rodney and I will discuss how it impacts the SEC, specifically Alabama. Plus, he's nearly 300 pounds. He runs a 4.7 40. He gets a scholarship offer from the Tide. We've heard that before. But this kid's in the 8th grade. That's the difference. You got to stay tuned for this. And also, your phone calls and emails, we'll get to those on the program. The phone number is always 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Email us at the address on your screen, or you can tweet at us using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the award-winning Tider Insider TV. We'll return right after this break.
This is a sad day for the University of Mississippi. Earlier today, we announced that Coach Hugh Freeze has resigned from his position as our head football coach.
Welcome back to Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock and Pepsi. By now, you've probably heard about the chaos at Ole Miss. I'm sure you have if you're a sports fan. Capped off with the resignation of head coach Hugh Freeze last week. Freeze resigned after the school learned of a pattern of misconduct, that's what they called it, relating to phone calls made to an escort service from a school-issued cell phone. Now, this is unrelated, they say, to the NCAA investigation that's still ongoing. Freeze was one of only 3 active coaches with multiple wins over Nick Saban. Urban Meyer and Mark Richt are the other 2, and now there's just one coach in the SEC has a win period over Nick Saban, and that's Gus Malzahn. Now, Ole Miss turns the reins over to Matt Luke, Rodney, who is the interim head coach. He's an Ole Miss guy, played there. His brother Tom was a quarterback there. His dad, a coach down on the Gulf Coast, played there. He's got to deal with a bowl ban already this year. So the question is, how does this impact the SEC, specifically Alabama? Because Ole Miss has been recruiting in a pretty high rung. I'm sure this is going to help everybody else. They're going to pounce on this opportunity, and of course, competitively in the league, Ole Miss looks like it's going to be affected as well. Yeah. And remember, they beat Alabama 2 the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, when you look at their recruiting, Gary, I think certainly in the state of Mississippi, really made it difficult for Alabama to go in there, which Alabama's done a tremendous job through the years of getting the top players out of that state. And Hugh Freeze made it almost impossible to go in there and, you know, for Alabama to get players, so many guys through the last 3 or 4 years that they had opportunities And in the past, they would have gotten those guys. So Hugh Freeze did a fantastic job in that regard. But so I think it's certainly going to hurt Ole Miss in terms of their recruiting in the state. And, you know, on the same hand, it should help Alabama possibly when you have a top prospect.
On the field, and I want to be clear on this, Ole Miss on offense has got some talent. Their wide receiving core is very good. Shea Patterson's a gifted young quarterback, good offensive line. Defensively, they've got a new coordinator in Wesley McGriff. They've got some holes there. They can't go to a bowl game, but I think Matt Luke will rally the troops a little bit. They're a dangerous team on the field. If you take them lightly, they could spring a couple of upsets.
Well, and I think, too, when you look at the schedule, they play Alabama fairly early in the year.
Before they get banged up.
Yeah, before they're banged up. They don't have a lot of depth, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And you mentioned, I mean, they have great receivers. Patterson's going to be a fantastic quarterback. So offensively, they should be pretty good. Defensively, again, they're a little bit undersized. They don't have a lot of depth. So that certainly could take a toll on them, Gary, as the season goes on.
And the story is ongoing as far as the NCAA investigation. Well, still to come, a former Alabama linebacker is now a UFC fighter. We'll have more on Eric Anders' big UFC debut this past Saturday. That's next. Plus, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Phone lines are starting to fill up, but there's still some available at 205-348-9882. Email TITV@WVUA23.com, or you tweet at us using that hashtag TITV. We'll be back with much more right after this.
I think I have a glass ceiling. You know, I'm relatively new to the sport. I live in the gym. If I'm not teaching, if I'm not coaching, then I'm teaching. I'm getting mental reps instead of physical reps. So I've totally immersed myself in the martial arts. So, no one knows except for me and the people I train with.
That's former Alabama National Championship linebacker Eric Anders after his UFC debut, a knockout of Rafael Natal in less than 3 minutes in Long Island, New York on UFC on Fox 25. The 30-year-old Birmingham resident is now 9-0 in his professional MMA career, 1-0 in the UFC. He's headed to big things. I mean, he's athletic, and he is strong, and he is fast, and all that good football stuff helps you out in the octagon, as they say. All right, Rodney, let's get to the phone lines. They're lined up for us. First, let's go to the Tomato Man. Sammy in Walker County. What's up, Sammy?
Hey, Gary, Rodney. Glad to talk with y'all. It's been a while. Thanks for taking my call and everything. And, Gary, my question was tonight was kind of a little off of the football scene, but the Birmingham News put out that top 100 of amateur athletes in the state, and this kid from Winfield, I don't know if y'all, the track
Yeah, we know him. Trey Cunningham, yeah.
Trey Cunningham. Elaborate a little bit on him. This kid is amazing. He can just fly, you know.
We'll do it, Sammy. And the reason I call him the Tomato Man, Rodney, is he drove all the way down from Walker County yesterday, about an hour, to bring me vine-ripened tomatoes that he grew himself, and they are beautiful.
Supposed to be some of the best in the world.
Yeah, they are. They're like an apple. Just take a chunk out of them. All right, Trey Cunningham from Winfield is a gifted track and field athlete, a national record holder. Going to Florida State. I mean, Alabama recruited him. He's one of the best in the country. You know, they didn't get him, but he's a tremendous athlete.
Yeah, you hate to lose a guy like that. So close to home, so gifted. You know, what did he set the world record?
I think the 110-meter hurdles, but he runs a lot of other events, too.
Yeah, he's a great sprinter.
But it's a loss for Bama, especially just up the road in northwest Alabama. Sammy, you'd love for him to be coming to Alabama, but Florida State, they got a terrific track program. Let's go up the road. Speaking of going up the road a little piece, to Gordo with our pal Eddie there in Gordo. What's up, Eddie?
Yeah, I just wonder about Ben Davis. I saw he got a lot stronger and grew a lot. I wonder if he's going to have some playing time this year.
I think so. He's a good football player, Eddie. I tell you, Alabama recruits so many good players, and especially if it's one from your hometown, like Davis is from Gordo, and you're a Gordo guy. Everybody wants their guys to play early. In his case, he was redshirted. I think he'll benefit from it, Rodney. He's a guy who's got a lot of versatility. I think he'll probably factor in initially on special teams, but he's going to be a good football player, don't you think?
Well, I think so. Again, he came in here. They had him at inside linebacker. He moved to the outside in the spring. They think he may have some, natural pass rushing skills. Maybe that's what fits him best. And as you mentioned, getting bigger and stronger is certainly a key for him. I think he's a really good athlete. And again, there's a lot of competition at those positions, a lot of young players. As Gary said, I think maybe initially special teams. But eventually we'll see Ben Davis.
Yeah, and his dad, Wayne, still the all-time leading tackler in Alabama football history. Let that soak in for a minute. All right, let's take a tweet from Don Juan, who loves to tweet at us. Who will be the place kicker, field goal kicker this year? Who will be the group of tight ends, Rodney?
Wow. The place kicker, that'll be an interesting situation. We, think that Joseph Balubas, the true freshman out of Mandeville, Louisiana, who was a high school All-American last year, we'll see what he does when he gets here. Well, he's actually here already, but once fall camp starts, I think that'll be key. So keep an eye on him. As far as the tight ends, I think Alabama's really got a good group.
Yeah, real good, versatile group. Younger Papanastos and J.K. Scott will factor in that place kicking deal as well.
Certainly could. But as far as the tight ends,
probably starts with Hale Hinchis.
Hale Hinchis is back. Miller Forrestall's still here. He's only a sophomore. Irv Smith is really a promising young guy. Major Tennyson's a true freshman.
Good group.
And I tell you what, a guy to really maybe kind of keep an eye on, Gary, that I think may be interesting is a possible H-back. A guy maybe that could do something here and there, and you certainly hope so, is Ronnie Clark. I thought he had a good spring. He's had tough luck with those 2 Achilles injuries.
I'm glad you mentioned him.
Yeah,
Tough kid.
Let's hope he really bounces back.
Over in Calera, he has been through one injury after another, but he just keeps on fighting. You pull for guys like that. All right, coming up on TITV, an Alabama legend returns to T-Town and makes an immediate impact on the field. We'll have the details on the softball doubleheader from Rose Stadium, an exhibition last week, and more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the information posted there on your screen on how you can get in touch with us. Phone lines are open at 348-9882. We'll be right back with more Tighter Insider TV. You stay with us.
Just to experience that with this team, I think is really cool, and it's something that's really special to me. Just being back home, getting to play in front of my family, and there's really not anything else like it.
Haley Mclennan was back home at Rhodes Stadium last week for an exhibition doubleheader between the Alabama Stars and her squad, the Team USA softball team. One of the most accomplished players in Bama history. McClennan's now an outfielder on the national team, the starting center fielder, in fact. And her new team beat a team comprised of all-stars with Alabama collegiate connections, including several of her former Alabama teammates, 9-1 and 7-0. Team USA just too much as expected for the Alabama All-Stars, but it was a fun night. All right, Rod, let's go back to the phone lines. Hadn't heard from our buddy Harold in Aston in a couple weeks, but he's with us now. How are you, Harold?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good.
Hey, I got a question, probably 2 parts, man. I'm thinking with the thing going on there at Ole Miss, man, that's going to help us, as y'all said earlier, man, with a lot of upcoming good 4- and 5-star players, man. I just want to know, y'all think that's going to give us a big jump on Mississippi State, because we usually can't get whatever we want out of Mississippi. And my other question is, as the thing y'all talked about before, I know Rashaan Evans had been working out at middle linebacker, but he had, been one of our best outside rushers, man. Just want to know, can y'all identify some people y'all think maybe going to be really good at rushing the passer this year?
Okay, all right, first Ole Miss, we kind of, as you said, Harold, pretty much touched on that. Yes, it's going to help Alabama. That's the short answer. So now to the pass rushers. Yeah, I think Rashaan Evans is going to work mainly at inside linebacker. Third downs, he could still come out. But you've got some young pass rushers, Christian Miller, not Terrell Hall anymore, Terrell Lewis and some other guys, Rodney, that are, I think, going to be able to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, they're going to be real interesting. And you may have even some younger guys that get some opportunities. Dylan Moses is working inside, worked outside in the spring and showed a lot of potential there. And, again, you're losing a lot of pressure from the outside when you're talking about Ryan Anderson, you're talking about Tim Williams. Certainly those guys got a lot of not only pressure on the quarterbacks, they produced a lot of sacks. And so there's a lot of slack that has to be picked up. But I think you could see Rashaan Evans in certain situations line up outside and rush the passer.
Now, whether or not you're going to see 54 sacks again, I don't know. That's a lot of sacks. But I do think they'll get after the quarterback and do a good job of it. Let's go to Pelham and talk with Barry. Barry, welcome into the program.
Good evening, guys. How are y'all doing?
Very well, Barry.
Got a question. How will this affect Ole Miss? Will people be able to transfer out without any penalties? Their prospects for other schools?
Yeah, we don't know yet. I think that we won't know the answer to that until the NCAA investigation is complete and the penalties are announced as to whether or not players will be able to transfer out without having to sit out. Now, we have seen that before in these situations, but we'll just have to wait to see if that is the case and players can transfer without penalty and be eligible somewhere else immediately. I think you'll see some guys take advantage of that. A lot of it depends on the timing of when this comes down, too. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions in that area, Barry.
Yeah, and we don't know exactly when that'll happen. Obviously, it won't happen this season. The NCAA is not likely to give them an answer for at least a few months.
Yeah, but it will be interesting when all this thing finally wraps up. I know Ole Miss fans are ready to get it over with. I think now just SEC fans in general are ready to get it over with. I'm tired of talking about it. All right, let's go. Let's stay here in Tuscaloosa and talk with our buddy CB. CB, what's up?
Not much, gentlemen. Hey, y'all, I tell you, it's kind of quiet in Bama country. You know, back in the day when Coach Brown was here, if it was quiet, they'd come out knocking doors down. What do y'all expect this time, brother?
About the same. I think when you got a program like Alabama's under Paul Bryant and now under Nick Saban, no news is good news. I mean, they know what they got to do. The culture here is about winning and about preparing, and they're going to be really good, really good again.
Yeah. You know, I think obviously there's a lot of excitement right now, Gary, when you start talking about the Alabama offense, the new look with Brian Dable. I think a lot of excitement about the potential of the offense. You've got a lot of new faces defensively. And again, I know people say, well, we lost all these guys, and certainly you did, and a lot of quality players in leadership. But at the same time, these are a lot of guys you've been waiting to see play more. Deshaun Hand, Rashawn Evans, some of the younger players that we've seen that they've recruited, Terrell Lewis now, as we mentioned. Anthony Jennings is another guy that we didn't mention earlier. Christian Miller's a guy that's been around for a while. Hasn't really gotten a lot of opportunity, but he's taken this time to get a lot bigger. So it'd be interesting to watch these guys.
Yeah, thanks for all the phone calls and tweets. Good stuff tonight. Still to come, Jaheim Otis isn't a household name right now, but he's going to be in a few years, because he's young. But he could wind up in crimson and white. We'll have that story for you when we come up. Man, look at that shot right there. Beautiful evening in T-Town. Stay with us. Jaheim Otis is a great prospect at 6'4", 286 pounds. He ran a 4.7 at the Ole Miss camp. That makes him a good prospect. What makes him a freak is that he's in the 8th grade. He's 14 years old. Yes, he has an Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama offer. Look at that. He looks good. We look good in our original elephant wear from the locker room. You need to check it out, downtown Tuscaloosa, or shop online at the best of the folks to see. For Rodney, I'm Gary. Thanks for watching TITV. Good night, everybody.